with our last presentation of the first set. It's called Counting is Not Analysis, plus How I Learned to Love the Long Tail.
This is work presented that builds on some work that me and my three partners have been doing in social media. And we all know that social media is important. There are 400 million blogs, and the death of blogs has been greatly exaggerated. And there are 75 million Twitter users, over 15 million active, and they generate a lot of data. And listening to what those people are saying is really important. Figuring out what people are talking about, what people are saying about you, in whatever field of life you're in, whether it's for marketing or business or other needs, it's really important because listening is the beginning of all strategy. The problem is it can be really, really difficult because there's so much material out there. And I want to look at two questions that we've been looking into here. First, is there more to analysis than just counting things? And second, how much data do you need to look at to do it well? So most people, they just count things. They count keywords, they count search results, they count media mentions, they count impressions. And that's great to a point, but it only gets you so far. First of all, it only lets you know about what you already know are your problems or your opportunities. Nobody has a crystal ball. And unless you had a crystal ball, you cannot possibly know everything that you should be counting. And plus, there's no discovery potential in counting things you already know exist. There's a more fundamental problem, and that is that counting cannot be enough by definition of the Internet. The Internet's a network. It's not about individual nodes. No node in the network tells you anything about the whole network. So what you have to do is do things different. And what you have to do differently is to count how often certain things happen alongside all of the other things and count all of those things at the same time. And this is where it gets complicated. It's not only about how you do analysis, but it's also what data you start with. There's so much material. There are billions and billions and billions of blog posts and tweets and Facebook messages and all sorts of other things. So what do most people do? They try and take a slice. They try and take a slice like you take a slice of a pizza and say, oh, I'll look at that, and that's going to tell me, and I can extrapolate from that small slice to the whole world. Problem is that doesn't work. Here's a demonstration of that. Here's a small slice. Nice, beautiful country inn, harbor inn restaurant, probably a great place to sleep, have a meal. The problem is that slice doesn't tell you very much about the whole scene. That slice was exactly 10% of the whole picture. I counted the pixels myself. So, in fact, that slice is very, very, very misleading. What is important here is the disaster scene. What was important was not the tiny slice. So people say often the benchmark seems to be 40 million blogs, and which is about 10% of the data. It's an impressive number, but it's still a pretty small slice. But a lot of people would say, okay, hang on. I know all of the people I've chosen to be in my slice. Those are all people that are important. Maybe, but maybe not. And there's absolutely no way to know if that's true or not. You can choose your slice by looking at only influencers. Problem is, here's your influencer. But that, as we saw before, that is completely irrelevant to the photo that we saw. Influence is not abstract. Influence is completely contextual. So using influencers first doesn't get you very far. Imagine this little blogger. She probably isn't very influential. But what if there are 500 bloggers like her? And what if they're all working together for a cause to pass along a specific message? You're not going to get very far if you've excluded her from the beginning. And this is why I love the long tail, because to do analysis of social media properly, you have to go all the way down the long tail to find out what's going on, even in the weak signals. This is an example of that, a real-life example, and this is a distribution analysis of all the Twitter users in Montreal who tweeted about the iPad launch on the day of the launch. And you can see at the very far end, there are some people who tweeted very often, and if you only look at the first 10%, you're missing, you're getting about 40% of the tweets. You're missing 60% of all the content. And among that 60%, you're missing people who, because it's Montreal and because I know my community, we've got some influencers, some local influencers, like Alistair, like Martin Dufort, like Craig, like Jérôme, who's here tonight, like Laurent Lassalle, like Patrick. And so you're missing all of those local influencers because you chose an arbitrary number. So what we have to do is to think differently, think more deeply, and think about social media in different ways so that we can get better information. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. Merci.